Hey, Steve and I are here doing the Junkyard Crawl at Burniston Auto Wrecking in Burniston, Massachusetts. And this is a Volkswagen Type 2 or Type 22, you choose, van. Now, these were built from 1968 through 1979 in Germany. However, in Latin America, they kept building these things through 1994. Now, this is a 1971, and we can kind of tell because it's what they call a low light. The marker lights, the turn lights here are below the headlights. For 1972, they went up here, known as the highlight. In fact, I brought a little prop. When I was a kid, about 1980 or so, I'm 15 years old, and I went up to Montreal, Canada, and I bought this little majorette, and this is a highlight version, 72 up, but again, a little U.S. Army type deal. But it shows us, of course, how Volkswagen moved the lamps, the directional signals from here to there in 71 to 72. Now, something else that happened for 1971 was the addition of disc brakes up front. Between 1968 and 1970, this would have a rounded hubcap like a Beetle, and drum brakes up front and a really big bolt pattern. But for 71, they went to a 5-lug small bolt pattern here. In fact, that's a 5 on 4.5, similar to a Mopar. And behind these wheels are disc brakes up front. And just like a Corvette rally wheel, which arrived in 1966-67 to cool the disc brake option, or standard brakes actually, on Corvettes, so too did Volkswagen use cooling holes in these wheels. So that's not just there for looks. These are functional cooling vents to let the disc brake breathe. And in fact, the hubcaps on these things are flatter, like this right here. Whereas the, again, 70 back to 68 be a rounder thing, like a Beetle. Go right like that. Now, one thing about the Type 2 or Type 22 is how the front doors open 90 degrees. That's not a problem. This is not broken, but very, very convenient. And the design of these things, you know, Volkswagen engineers were absolutely thinking about everything twice. And it's nice, just nice full opening doors. Now, these were air-cooled vehicles. So that means management of air, whether it's for the people or the engine, was a critical detail. On the front, above the headlights, between them, is an air grill, and we can see it up here, again, that area right there with the rust, but air would come in through that, not for the engine, because remember, the engine's in the back, but that would then feed a heater box up at the nose under the windshield. Let's take a peek inside there, and we can see a series of steel formed ducts, basically sheet metal ducts that run like a T, and they feed these outlets here, which then would feed into the doors. And now the door panels are gone on this, but there would be an integral door hump here inside of the door panel that would have a hallway that would then meet that rubber seal and then send the warm air upward from, actually it fed from the back. So again, it's interesting how Volkswagen was managing airflow, not just for the engine, but also for the occupants inside. Now this one is kind of unusual. The windows on this here are not factory. They show a 1968 manufacturer. Again, these are Herculite solid tempered windows, sort of like a camper conversion right here. More on that in a second. But as we make our way back, 1968, of course, the Type 22 got away from the Microbus of 67 back, which had basically a flat 4, as does this, or did this, but the Microbus used a transfer type gearbox at each rear wheel to raise the rear wheels down. These got away from that. These actually have 4 U-joint type rear axle shafts. Take a look underneath the back here, and we can see that the half shafts on this are still in place, hanging down on the ground right there. You can kind of see them. But again, this is a new design, whereas the Microbus would have had sort of a portal style transfer case at each corner. Now, something about this is that transmission is gone, because the Microbus has a 537, the Type 2 has a 537 axle ratio, whereas the Beetle would have a 4.2 to 1. So a lot of Volkswagen drag racers and dune buggy people like to grab the 537 axle or differentials out of the Type 22s and put them in bugs, because they work really good to make better drag racing and off-road type ratios. Now this one here is rear engined, as were all Microbuses, and again the Type 22s. It's no longer here. Somebody snagged it. But learning from the mistakes or the experience of the original Microbus, which had flush-mounted grills on the side of the body right here to let air into the engine bay, for the Type 22, they came up with these larger scoops. This one's smashed in, but these scoops on the side here grab plenty of air to draw down into the engine compartment to make sure that that flat 4 breathes well. Now, 1971 was the year that Volkswagen went to a 4-port cylinder head for the flat 4, I think a 1600cc engine. So 71 was really a transitional year for the Type 22 or Type 2 bus, as we see here. Now, getting back to the roof on this one, let's walk around to the other side. Now, this one, sadly, again, is here in Massachusetts, and you know, it's pretty rusty. Is there hope? I don't know. And I know at Barrett-Jackson, we see the microbuses, the 23 windows, selling for in excess of $100,000. And they always say that a rising tide lifts all ships. The Type 22s or Type 2s, you choose it, I think are also rising. Now, something interesting about the 68 through 94 in Mexico, Type 22 is the sliding door. The microbus had opening doors, but again, this was a very novel touch. And again, a lot of American vans didn't have sliding doors on the side till you get into the early 70s. So kind of an innovative thing. But getting back to that roof, look at this. This is a factory installed camper top. Now, this is not a Westphalia. Now, those would have had a fiberglass lid all the way around the roof, the Westphalias. This is something in between. I think this might have been called a camper bus or a camper van. You know, I might be incorrect on that. I'm mostly a car guy, but with that said, pretty rare stuff. This little pup tent right here is absolutely factory engineered stuff. If we look inside, we'll see here, nicely done, you know, heavy gauge metal hinges. A little architecture right there. These want to go up and down. And again, this would have been a neat little camper van, you know, take it to the Grateful Dead show or whatever. But again, pretty rare stuff to see the steel, you know, factory sunroof. Now, you could also get a sliding metal sunroof on your Type 22 from 68 up. And unlike the previous microbus where the roof insert was fabric, for the second version, the Type 22 Type 2, they made a steel sliding roof. But this takes that a step further. The sliding roof on this one is no longer functional or even present. Yeah, by contrast, this is truly a pop-up tent on this one. So I'm thinking this is probably a Volkswagen piece or a very well done second tier. Now, the thing that maybe tells me that this may not be a Volkswagen item is the generic camper style window on the other side, the tempered glass we saw a moment ago from 1968. So it's possible this thing was converted from a sunroof to the camper. Not sure, but with that said, here we also see this is in its original condition. This is one of those air scoops added for the Type 22, which does a great job of, like a catcher's mitt, grabbing air into the engine compartment. Now, the only downside of this thing is that it is a classic New England vehicle, and it looks kind of original, but it's not. You can see right here, there's a bunch of plastic body filler, and it's definitely, this car has been doctored. Down here, we can see right here, well, the filler was put on there probably back in 1979 or 80 to give this thing a second lease on life. But the bummer is that there's a lot of rust hiding on this one, and it's structural rust. But again, as they say, where there's a will, there's a way. And as the prices of microbuses and 23 windows go through the roof, it's quite possible that this roofless and pretty uncommon camper might be a good investment for somebody to come and get. It's here at Bernardson Auto Wrecking. I stay out of the middle of these things, but if somebody wants to call them up, just ask for Dale and work a deal or whatever it is. But in the meantime, let's shed a tear for this camper Type 22 1971 Volkswagen bus. Now, if you like this video, be sure to subscribe to the Steve Maggs YouTube channel. There's lots more to come right here at Bernardson Auto Wrecking.